living out your passions with a few lines. Power fuel living, power fuel living.
Welcome to Power Fuel Living. I'm your host, Lisa Hooks, and I'm excited about today's show. Today I have a special guest, Paula Wallace. Paula, welcome to Power Fuel Living. I am so excited to have you on the show today.
Thank you, Lisa. I'm absolutely thrilled to be here talking to you about this.
Yes, girl. We got some good stuff to talk about. Paula, you wrote well, actually, it's a compilation of stories, Bloom in the Dark, true stories of hope and redemption. Paula, when I read this book, oh my gosh, I mean, tissues, chocolates, ice cream, Hallmark, true crimes, it is just an amazing book. What I love about this book is it's very true to life and very honest. So Paula, how did Bloom in the Dark happen?
Well, Lisa, it was an interesting story because I moved to Franklin, to this Nashville area, thinking it was for a job. And then the job fell apart within 3 weeks. And I suddenly was in a position where I'd moved away from family and friends and everybody, asking God, why am I here? Like, I've left everybody. I have no support system. I have nothing. Why? And this thought just kept popping up in the back of my head that there was a book I was supposed to write. And I was like, I haven't done creative writing in 25 years. And I'm supposed to write a book? Like, what book? Remember the book you wanted to help you when you were going through your brokenness? Remember that book? And I was like, I so wished when I was in my really broken place and I hadn't found healing yet, that there had been something that would tell me that there was hope. And I never found that. And so later when I did find healing, I was like, why isn't there something out there that would have told me to get help sooner, that would have given me the opportunity to reach out, to believe that there was hope for me? And there wasn't there. And it was like God was prompting me, this is the time, this is the place for you to actually create the tool that you wished you'd had, so that other women and other girls who'd been broken would have a tool that would give them the inspiration and the hope to actually reach out for help and change their futures the way God did for me.
And this book does that. This book, for me, it was very inspirational. As a counselor, as a life coach, and even as someone who has experienced difficulties in life, it inspired me. It made me want to share some of these stories with my clients and family and friends, and this book is a blessing. And you have been sharing this book with so many, to the point, and I saw this, that for each book that's bought, you donate it. You donate one.
We do, and not just there, because the heart was to get this into the hands of hurting women who can't get it for themselves, in prisons, in shelters, in counseling centers where they're just desperate and wanting something to give them hope moving forward. But a lot of those women can't afford it. They're not in a position to go buy a book. They're not in the bookstores. And I was like, how do I get it to them? And I'm a single mom. I have 3 boys to raise. I don't have this unlimited budget to just, print books and give them away. So how could I get it into their hands anyway? And that's where the people who buy the books help, because they're actually not just paying for their own book, they're paying for the book that they give to somebody who's in a prison, to somebody who is in a battered women's shelter, who's getting help out of desperation, a halfway house, coming out of drug abuse, whatever it is. And they are actually, by buying this book, giving one to somebody who's really desperate.
Yeah.
And that makes it a partnership instead of it just being me trying to do it, or other people not knowing what to do for somebody that's hurting that they'd like to reach out to. They can be our partner in reaching out. And that's why we actually created Bloom in the Dark Incorporated, which is a 501c3 charity that's designed specifically to give these books and messages of hope to women everywhere.
Yes,
So-
yes. And messages of hope they are. These are some powerful testimonies. You know, it's interesting, like I said it in the beginning, how honest these stories are. You know, a lot of women are afraid to share their story, afraid to share their testimonies. Do you think that's very important for us?
Well, I'm laughing because denial is the number one coping mechanism for people who've been in abuse, especially if it's sexual abuse or it's shameful, and or if you've made bad choices or if you've had hurtful things happen that aren't the Hallmark card style things. You want to hide because you really think people are going to judge you. They're going to look down on you. They're not going to love you if you admit to any of that. And I know because the abuse in my life started when I was 2, and then I got raped when I was 5. That's not something that people want to go around bragging about. That is shameful and painful. But what I realized was if I didn't admit the truth, then I couldn't get help and actually work through it. And do you realize you can't get blackmailed over something that's public knowledge?
That's right.
And it's crazy because the dark things in our life that torment us inside can do that when the shame and guilt say, well, if anybody knew, they would hate you. Well, you know what? A whole lot of the world knows that about me now. And I have learned that people love me. People reach out to me. And I have learned that admitting that and being kind of emotionally naked on stage in a public arena through the book and through speaking means that people can relate and have hope for the broken little girl that they've got hiding. Mm-hmm. And so instead of going with a denial, going out there and sharing my testimony that I should be in a mental institute, I should have committed suicide, I should be completely broken based on the past that I have. And instead, I'm a happy, healthy, single mom, raising 3 amazing boys and having a full life, wonderful friends, an amazing, just an amazing real life. But if people just see me, they don't have any clue where I come from.
Sure.
And so they're like, oh, great, you're happy, that's wonderful. And I even had somebody ask me, well, I don't believe you were ever abused because you don't act like a victim. And I said, well, what proof do you want?
And what is a victim supposed to act like? You know, it's interesting that you say that because secrets do. They keep us in bondage. Mm-hmm. And how many people are we interacting with? Do we have in our family? Do we call friends? Do we work with that have secrets, secret shame, issues that they have not dealt with, that they have tried to hide, but they look great. Mm-hmm. Many times they're very successful.
Absolutely.
And they put on this air that all is well, but
Mm-hmm.
they're really hurting.
And I did that. For 34 years, I worked to protect myself by covering up the brokenness. And I had an amazing facade. Professionalism and being an executive, business owner, and whatever, I kept it polished and smooth. But what was different about me was the fact that I couldn't show any cracks. I couldn't show any reality. I couldn't admit to being wrong because that would mess it up. And I had to stay, it had to be flawless. And I couldn't be real when I was living this fake facade all the time. And that meant that my friendships weren't real, my relationships, my family, everybody was completely based on lies. And it's amazing how that interferes with any real connection. So you end up being isolated and lonely, even when you're in a crowd of people, even when you're at family functions, even when you're with all the people that should make you feel loved, because you really believe that if they knew the truth, they wouldn't love you.
What was the turn? What was the, okay, enough is enough?
Well, when you kind of hit the end of your rope at a level that your life is on the line, it gets to the realization that that facade just crumbled and broke. Maybe other people haven't seen it yet because you're hiding, but I knew that I couldn't continue living, period. What that would have looked like, I don't know. But I was so desperate, I cried out to God, God, I don't care what it takes, but I need help. And I didn't know who to go to for help. I didn't know how. And God just brought some people and ministry options and counseling and different things into my life at different stages that gave me the courage and the help I needed to start making real changes and to start exposing the brokenness and the lies and asking for help and having people pray for me and support me and walk through a healing journey with me. And it's kind of like finding out you have cancer and you've been living a normal, happy life, or at least pretending to, without recognizing that there's something inside of you trying to kill you. And you get a diagnosis, it is absolutely devastating because suddenly you've got to face the fact that you're going to die. And that's not a happy thing. And then you're looking at the healing process to not die. Could include surgery, it could include chemotherapy, it could include all these devastating, painful things. And people a lot of times look at brokenness as emotional abuse style or darkness, things in your life like that you've hidden. And facing them, they're like, but it's going to hurt. If I go there, it's going to feel like it's going to destroy me. And the fact is that's true. It does hurt. It is difficult. But why do we go through surgery? If our life is on the line, I don't want to die.
Right, right.
You know,
Yeah.
I don't want to be broken. I don't want to be on so much medication that I can't function. I don't want to end up going to a mental institute because I've had a breakdown because I can't cope anymore. I would much rather start the surgery and start the healing process, however painful it might be, and
Well,
actually
that's very
live.
brave. Yeah, that's very, very brave because many times people are hurting, they're sick, they're wounded, and they won't go for help because the help feels more fearful than what they're actually going through.
Well, you know, we don't change until the pain of change
Yeah.
is less than the pain of staying the same. And that's what I hit, was the pain of staying the same wasn't tolerable anymore. And so I either had to change or give up. And thank God that my relationship with him meant that I chose change and healing. And I have an amazing life. Mind you, this has been 9 years of healing and working through things. It wasn't an overnight instant magic fix.
It usually isn't, yeah. It usually isn't.
No. And the more brokenness you have, the more the healing process usually takes because there's more to work through.
So, Paula, you mentioned counsel.
Mhm.
What type of counsel did you seek?
Well, I went to a marriage counselor for the last couple days of my marriage, evidently. Things hit the fan, and I went back to the marriage counselor for a second appointment by myself. My husband had left, and I said, I need help. I can't deal with this situation anymore, and I don't know what to do. And so I actually started a counseling process that was meant to be for marriage counseling because I thought that was acceptable counseling. Like,
Right,
I couldn't go to
right.
counseling just for myself.
Yeah.
But for marriage, you know, people do that sometimes. And God just used that as the open door to get me in the door
Yes.
at that time. And that really helped me identify a lot of the brokenness in my past that I had shoved down and hidden and been in denial about or pretended hadn't happened, because that was the way I coped.
And that's a big deal because I am still experiencing conversations where people are afraid of counseling. They know they have a need, and they are still, I guess the stigma of the past and how we viewed counseling, you know, still affects many people. But it is so effective in helping people deal with their issues and come through processes, and I always encourage it. But one of the reasons why I chose to become a coach was actually because I was coming across so many people who were afraid of counseling that I said, well, how about I coach you? How about I coach you through some things or coach you to this solution? So it sounds like you were very brave to even continue through that process, because you could have very easily said, okay, you know, I don't want to go past this marriage counseling piece. You know, I don't know that I want to deal with this issue because it could be very painful. But you were ready. You were ready. It was a life and death situation for you.
You get desperate enough and you're willing to do things like surgery and chemotherapy and whatever it takes. And emotionally, that's where I was, because giving up and quitting wasn't an option. I had 3 babies. Well, they're big boys, they're not babies. But they were my babies, and they needed a mom, especially now that they didn't have a dad. They had to have a mom, right? Yeah. So it was an opportunity for me to just say, okay, God, I'm willing to do whatever it takes to heal, to change, to be the mom I need to be, to make a difference and not be this broken, sick, just depressed, miserable person all the time.
Yeah.
Because the one thing people never said about me was that I was happy. They would say I was serious, I was intelligent, I was all kinds of other things, but not happy. And when I started getting help and started really having hope And somebody said, well, you're just one of those naturally happy people. And I was like, who are you talking about? Because that can't be me, because I had always been, from a small child, serious and hiding and anything to protect myself or to disappear or to not be out there in the public eye, because there was a lot of risk that people would hurt me. And so it's one of those things where when God's life comes in and fills where those dark places have really just damaged you, and you can start being a whole, healthy person that God loves and that can build healthy, honest relationships and be surrounded by community that's based on the truth and not on lies.
Yes.
It's crazy how big a difference that makes inside of you.
Absolutely. That inner healing just comes forth. And then, you know, when you get to a level of inner healing, it seems like you just want more and you can't stop. And so you're willing to do everything it takes now at this point. And so it's like you're driven for that healing to continue to occur. And so as you were going through your inner healing, how did this come about? Were you thinking about some people who had experienced the same things, or, you know, were you already in contact with some women who had overcome? How did Bloom in the Dark come about?
Well, when I felt God spoke to me to write a book, and I was in a great environment to do that. This is a nice creative atmosphere in the Nashville area. And I started thinking of a few people that I knew growing up where I had heard bits and pieces of their story, or I knew a little bit, not publicly, they hadn't gone public, but where, because I was broken too, they'd been a little bit more honest with me. And I contacted them with, if I write a book, would you mind sharing your story? And I realized, both for myself and my own safety and some of my story that's in there, and other people's, that they needed protection. Because especially if it's darkness and hurt and has an abuse component, there's a lot of times people wanting to hurt you. And for people to be honest about their story and not hurt their families or their children, not put themselves at risk, that we needed to tell the stories in a way that they were protected so they could be honest. And so every story in there is written anonymously, and it has a flower as the author, which was wonderful, because when God gave me the name Bloom in the Dark, the blooming and flowers, that's not where a plant just grows and survives. A plant doesn't flower until it's got enough life to support itself and give excess.
Yes.
So that's the part that's beauty and reproduction, and it's not in its death throes, that's in its abundant life part. And so for each of these women to have found hope and healing, to where they could share that story with other people and have that bless other people as well, they had to have reached a level of healing, which I call being an ex-victim. Because that means been there, done that. Like, I can be honest, like, I'm an ex-wife. That's not something that I'm proud of or think is a good thing, but it's something I can own up to and admit to. I was a wife for 15 years, but I'm not a wife anymore. And I say that about being a victim as well. I'm an ex-victim. I was a victim for a lot of years, but I'm not a victim anymore. And that means I'm in a position to admit that publicly and to share my story to help other people. And these women and girls, just the heart they had to help other women who were hurting and say, I'm willing to put the risk and the pain out there. And they would tell me their stories, and we would go through stuttering and crying, and we'd both be sobbing just talking through the stuff. And then when I was writing, it was the same thing. I would be reliving their story with my hands on a keyboard and tears pouring out of my face. Because
it's not always easy to tell your story.
Oh, no.
Because even though you are experiencing healing, and even when you feel like you're at a place of wholeness, sometimes telling that story and reliving that story can make you feel emotional. Not that you're broken anymore, not that, you know, you still have anything to work on. I have talked to some public speakers and Christian ministers who will not share their testimony or share their stories because they don't feel like they're ready, because they feel the emotions of it. But I always encourage them, it's okay, you're ready. Your story needs to be told. There are women who need you, multiplied women, because a lot of times we feel isolated. We feel like we're the only ones who are experiencing what we've experienced. We're not alone. There are more who have experienced it. And I love the fact that you are willing to tell your story as well as share other stories. And like I said, the honesty in these stories are so great and they're so inspiring. So Paula, leave us with some fuel points. Leave me with 2 fuel points for our audience. When you think about your story, when you think about your experience, when you think about women in need, leave us with some help.
Well, the first thing is pretending it didn't happen, whatever your area of brokenness is, that doesn't stop it from doing you damage. So find a trusted friend, a family member, somebody who you really believe loves you and is safe, and tell them your story. Because that's the first step in taking ownership of it, and it's the first step in getting the courage to go outside of that circle to get help, which is very, very important. And the second thing is your relationship with Christ. That's the miraculous part of healing, because everybody in the world can help you work through and manage symptoms and process things. But the true healing comes in a personal relationship with a Christ that designed you, created you, and loves you. It doesn't matter if other people hated you and hurt you. It doesn't matter if other people have told you you're worthless and that you're a failure and that everything's wrong with you. The creator of the whole universe loves you and created you in his image. And when he can speak life directly into you in a personal relationship with him, then all that other stuff doesn't matter the same way. And it gives you the courage to forgive. It gives you the opportunity to change your reality, because there's actual real hope. And that's where us sharing our stories in there, and there's 30 different types of stories, is our opportunity, those of us who've done that, to say, hey, if we could do it, if God could heal us, then no matter what your story is, there's hope. You're not alone, and there really, really is hope to have a brand new life that's completely different and healthy and worth living, for real.
Yeah. So, Paula, how did you get past the, God, why did you let this happen to me? That is such a big hindrance and such a big question that many seem to ask. Why did you let this happen to me? Did you experience that?
I was asking God that question as a very small child, because I did have a relationship with God very early, having been the daughter of missionaries and learning about God as part of our lifestyle. So when I got hurt and kept getting hurt, I would cry out to God with, God, why? Why didn't you stop it? Why didn't you protect me? Just, you could if you're God, right? But there's evil in this world, and evil happens. And I learned that I had to trust God, that no matter what happened to me, that he was the God that could heal and restore it. And not just heal and restore, but bring good out of it. Because somebody needed to be a voice for the people who didn't have a voice. And I couldn't talk about these things. I couldn't write about them in an honest way if I didn't know what it felt like. I couldn't write other people's stories for them if I couldn't feel the emotions and the pain and the hurt that went with it.
So, Paula, so you made the choice to say, I'm going to trust you anyway. Although this has happened to me, I'm still going to trust you. I'm going to trust you to heal. I'm going to trust you to deliver me. I'm going to trust you to bring wholeness to this brokenness.
Yes, and trust that you'll use that brokenness to help other people. Mm-hmm. Let it be a mission and not just for me, that I can be healed. But God, use it for bigger than that. Let it be that other people can have hope, that they can find healing in you too.
I like that. I like that, because that is so important when we receive those levels of healing and deliverance, and those levels of God interacting with us and moving in our lives. You know, it's not just for us. It is for us because God loves us, and he came, you know, he sent his son to set the captives free, to heal us, deliver us from sin. So it is for us. But then he also tells us to go out and share what God has done, what Jesus has done on the cross for others. So I love the fact that you have taken your testimony and the testimony of others to a level of sharing it with the world. Because this is worldwide, isn't it?
Well, right now it's in most of the states in the United States, and a few people have taken it to other countries. The goal is that every hurting person who really doesn't think there's hope for them, that they would get a chance to see that there's hope for them too, and realize that they're not alone, and that would be the norm, that no matter what happens to you, you would know that there was hope and healing available for you. And the fact that now it's in prisons and shelters and halfway houses and counseling centers and all kinds of places across the country where broken women are getting the chance to see, because they've been told, oh, this happens to other people too. But I know from my own experience, I never believed anybody.
Okay.
Because
Yeah.
I didn't know, and I wouldn't believe the healing because I didn't believe the brokenness.
Yeah.
So these are raw stories that tell you the brokenness is real, but so is the healing.
Yeah. Bloom in the Dark tells me that if God did it for them, He can do it for me. And that's another reason why I love this book. Paula, where can people find Bloom in the Dark?
Well, we have a website that's bloominthedark.com, and we also have a Facebook page, Bloom in the Dark. We're on various types of social media. You can go to Amazon and get a Kindle version of it or a paperback version of it. And if you want to help other people, you can buy books at full price to get donated, or you can just donate to Bloom in the Dark Incorporated, and because it's a charity, that gives you a tax write-off, if that helps out at all. But you can reach out and help a lot of other hurting people just by participating in buying a book or a t-shirt or a necklace or anything that we have out there that is sharing that message of hope with other people. And you can read it for yourself, and I recommend everyone that has one, please give it away. Read it and then share it with somebody else that needs it, so that each book can touch the most people possible with that message of hope.
Well, Paula, thank you for joining me. I love the work that you've done. I love this book, and I highly recommend that you go to bloominthedark.com and purchase the book, get to know Paula more, and I just want to thank you for joining me on Power Fueled Living.
Thank you for watching Power Fueled Living. Here are the fuel points from today's show.
Living out your passions with a few lives. Power Fueled Living.
For more fuel points and an outline of today's show, visit our website at www.powerfueledliving.com.
Next on Power Fueled Living.
And I could hear him one day speak to me, and he asked me specifically, what do you think they're going to do when I call you to pastor, to leadership? And to me, it was one of those moments where, God, you can't be talking to me.
Right, right.
Because I was reared up in a place in ministry, have been a part of this ministry for years, just serving the pastor, serving and doing all of these things. And we were taught that women, you can minister in certain areas, but you cannot be a leader. You cannot.
Finding a purpose to fulfill your life. Living out your passions with a few lives. Power Fueled Living. Power Fueled Living.